So excited today to be talking with Jesse Lubinsky, and he's an education evangelist for Adobe. But today, Jesse, we really want to talk about what teachers have accessible for free because there's still some awesome free ed tech tools that they can use in the classroom. And one of those is Adobe Express, which is free for all schools. So this is a really cool creative tool that can be used by anybody.
Right. I know that when people think of Adobe, they tend to think of PDFs, Photoshop, or our Creative Cloud tools, which are really, pricey creative tools that industry professionals use. And that's not necessarily something that every classroom is going to use. So what does the teacher in their classroom do to get access to stuff that's going to allow them to empower their students through creativity? And so Adobe Express is our solution to that.
Okay, so teachers, we're going to talk about 10 awesome free ways that you can use these different tools in your classroom. So, Jesse, what's your first really cool way of an idea that teachers can use?
One thing that I know that teachers have been using a lot is one of our quick actions, which is called Animate from Audio. And Animate from Audio is actually based on one of our Adobe tools called Character Animator, where it allows you to simply pick a character, pick a background, and then record. And when a student is done recording, it will actually animate the character based on the inflections of the student's voice and how they've spoken. And so it seems like almost like you're an animated character. And there's so many ways to use that from an instructional standpoint. If you think about it, for those creative students who want to create animations, they can actually get multiple characters in there using some tricks and create, animated scenes. But even for something as simple as student reflection, it's one of my favorite tools where even if you put as the backdrop an image of the work you've done and have a student simply take that quick write or that end of lesson reflection we would typically have them do and turn it into something more creative. We find that when students have a creative opportunity to engage in their work, they're more likely to get a creative outcome. And so this is actually a really great way to do that.
Okay, so I love Character Animator. One thing I've always loved about it is that the kids who don't really like to go on camera, they can be a goldfish or they can be a
Exactly.
parrot or they can be whatever. And like, I'll have them explain how the internet works in the animated character of your choice. And they do these funny voices and all that. But you're saying that that's available for free,
For
that
free.
anybody can do that. Because, see, that's really cool. And kids of all
Anyone
ages
can
would
do
love
that,
that.
and it doesn't require the mechanics of a character animator where you actually have to show how you want the character animated. We have preset characters that we add every month. A lot of them are thematically based on whatever's going on that time of year. You can even have transparent backgrounds and add it into our editor so you can add your own background. For the beginner, it's easy, but for the expert who wants to do a lot of work with it, they can actually do that.
Oh, that's a lot of fun. And you could probably do that with most ages. Is this web-based?
It's totally web-based. So if you if you have a Chrome browser, it'll work.
Okay, what's your second?
So this one kind of goes hand in hand. So for those of you who don't know, Firefly is Adobe's version of generative AI, and Firefly actually shows up in Adobe Express for free. We have several different functions within Adobe Express, and one that pops out to mind right away is text to image, which allows you to simply take text and turn it into an image. From an instructional standpoint, from a pedagogical standpoint, I think we're moving from this paradigm of having students search for content to creating content. And so rather than the time that students would have to spend searching online for an image, if they could think of it and if they can use their critical thinking and reading, writing skills to create the prompt, I know we talk a lot about prompt generation, or they'll be able to create that image. And so that is built into Express as well. And so I mentioned that with the Animate from Audio in the sense that I can have a character with a transparent background and then I can make that background if I don't have one in the gallery I want.
Yeah.
But there's a number of different ways that we've seen people use this from an instructional standpoint. One way that actually one of my colleagues talked about the other day was in teaching idioms and having students to use text to image, right? If you're searching for standing on pins and needles, chances are you're not going to find an image of people literally standing on pins and needles. Have them use their words in creative ways to generate images that they wouldn't be able to find online.
Well, and it's such an incredible tool. We actually have the AI art awards that we've had in my classes for some time now. And I had a student who wanted to create empathy for those who are outside in the cold in this very cold weather. So she was literally sitting on a chair in the classroom, and she took herself and put herself in the middle of the winter on a park bench in New York. And she changed her clothing and she changed her hair. She changed everything. And it was one of the ones that won in our AI art contest because everybody was just like, where did you take this? And she's like sitting in that chair in the computer lab.
And you actually mentioned another feature that's a generative AI feature, which has become pretty famous for being in Photoshop, but it's actually in Express as well, and that's generative fill. So that's
Mm-hmm.
not creating an image from a text prompt. That's just taking an image I have, and maybe there's something I want to add or change about that image. So maybe, Vicky, you're wearing a blue hat, but you need to be wearing a red hat, or you want to be wearing
Mm-hmm.
a formal dress instead of a sweater. Well, you can literally highlight those areas and just with some words change something or add it to an image. So that's another thing that's built into Adobe Express.
Of course, we all know the only place that AI can struggle is hands.
So
Hands are
it's been
just
getting better.
crazy. That's where we're like, oh, Miss Davis, I have 8 fingers, and it's like, yeah, let's just work with it, and it's coming around.
The wild west of generative AI has been crowdsourcing prompts from audiences, and I actually had a crowdsourced prompt the other day that was giraffes in Germany wearing tutus. And even as I was typing it in, I was like, well, on a giraffe, does a tutu go on? Like, where does the tutu go? And it's
Yeah,
funny
exactly.
because we had a few different variations of that. So,
That's funny.
it's learning. It's getting better all the time. Even the latest version of Firefly is so much better than earlier versions. But just
Oh,
being
yeah.
able to see what students are able to do with this. A school district we worked with did a vocabulary lesson in 7th grade where they were having students create visualized images of the words they were studying. The teacher had half the class do it using a traditional image search and half the class do it using Express. And what they found was that the students who were creating rather than searching were not only more likely to complete the lesson, but almost all of them exceeded expectations based on the standards of the assignment. But my
Ah.
favorite part of that story is that halfway through, like 30 minutes in, a student raised their hand and said, "Are we going to do work today or are we just doing this?" But they were doing the lesson. Like they were doing the
Yeah.
work. It's just it seemed too fun to be the work.
Yeah. It is. It's very exciting.
So
Let's get to number
we're
3.
a third one. Teacher in New York City recently showed me this, but she's been using our all-in-one editor to do stop motion animation. And what's great about Adobe Express is that we have tools that do image editing, we have tools that do video editing, but our editing all happens all in one interface. So it's an all-in-one editor. And so that allows you to do a number of different things, right? You can simply change an image to a video simply by adding an animation, but you can go back and forth. There's a lot of flexibility to allow for creative opportunities where teachers don't have to focus on the tool, but can focus on the outcomes. So stop motion animation is one of my favorite use cases of that I've seen recently.
Excellent. And
Fourth
see, I
thing,
have a science teacher right now who wants to do stop motion animation for cellular mitosis. So I'm going to say, okay, let's go there.
right? And
Okay.
if you think about it, it's as
Awesome.
simple as duplicating a scene, moving, and just
Yep.
making the simple. But now it's web based, and we're not worried about downloading like a full. Okay, next thing. Since you're familiar with Adobe Creative Cloud, you might know Adobe Fresco, which is an illustration tool that allows for drawing. Well, there's now a drawing component built in there as well. So even for those students who want to draw or and want access to those types of brushes they would use in a more advanced illustration tool, they can do that as well. The nice part about that is you can add drawing components to your images and videos. So it's not just simply a matter of choosing stock imagery or stock videos or whatever you can find. It's being able to add those illustrative components as well. So there's a number of different ways you can connect that to curricular work. One way, I know sometimes when we talk about these tools, any tool, world language classroom, NL classrooms, ELL classrooms sometimes get left out of the conversation. One particular workflow that I have loved is the ability to take a video that I've already made, caption that video, and translate that into multiple languages. So as a teacher who's always looking to communicate with parents, and I know that I started my teaching career in New York City, sometimes my classroom had 6 or 7 different languages being spoken at the homes of my students, and communicating with those parents, for me to be able to now record a video, caption that, and then send it in those native languages to the homes with one click, incredibly easy. But think about the language learner. The language learner who sometimes needs another partner to be able to have a conversation with. Well, they can simply record a video of them speaking about a prompt, and then translate that to see, well, what did they actually just say? So it's now this way of kind of doing self-assessment of the work they're doing as well.
To double check. Oh, that's
Right,
that's
exactly.
fascinating. That's great. So that would be great for language. That's built into
Yep, so
which
we have a caption video quick action that's in Express, and the translate tool is built directly into the editor itself.
cool caption video.
And yeah,
Okay, let's
um,
go.
you know, this idea of remixable templates, I'm the type of creative person that it's funny, I work for Adobe and we're the creativity company, but I don't know if I'd call myself a creative by trade, because if you hand me a blank piece of paper, I freak out. Like, I need to have some starting place for my creativity. And I know it's the same for a lot of students. And sometimes we just kind of say, okay, now go. Well, that's really hard to do.
Yeah, it
So
is.
the idea that teachers can find content and create remixable templates. There's a lot of content out there that provides a starting point, but what we allow you to do is take that starting point, tweak it, and then now use that as the starting point for your students, all with one click. So that's a nice way for teachers to find starting points. And a great place to find some of those starting points are through our monthly creative challenges, which again, are part of our tool. They're on our Education Exchange, but when you're an educator, there's an educator resources button in our product that gives you access to thousands of templates and resources. But our creative challenges are things that happen every month on social. If you look at the Adobe EDU creative hashtag, you'd see them. But every month we pick a thematic idea of what's happening in the education space. We create a template and provide that as a starting point for educators to launch into their own creative activity with their students. And what's great
Cool.
about that is we've seen how subject area or grade levels have modified and tweaked those to fit their own needs, right? So something for creative identity, to tell me about your creative self, could be adapted by an English teacher to be about a character from a book, or a historical figure in a history class. Or my favorite, in a math class, rather than being a person, it was a cylinder, and it was the properties of that cylinder all around it. So,
Yeah.
teachers are the greatest creatives around because they're always able to find new ways to innovate and reimagine these type of activities in their classrooms.
Education Exchange is fantastic. I've written some things for Adobe Rush, for several different
Right.
tools. I've got content in the Education Exchange, free templates, and I know a lot of teachers like me have shared free templates in the Exchange too.
And we
It's
have thousands of
fantastic.
lesson plans that are great, and they all include remixable templates that are great
Yeah,
starting points. Look, we know no
yeah.
teacher pulls stuff offline and use it exactly as it is.
Hmm.
It's a starting point, and that's what
Yeah,
we want to provide, is let you know you're not alone. You have starting points, you have support. We're here for you.
that's awesome.
Um,
Okay, let's go.
Okay, number 8 we'll say is collaboration, and that's the idea that we're all used to the idea of a collaborative document, but what about the idea of a collaborative video that's web-based, where now all these things I've been talking about, even the generative AI projects and the Animate from audio, well, I can have multiple students in these projects together working on them at once. So now that allows us to kind of open up the possibilities for what it's like to actually engage in a creative endeavor in the classroom.
And so if they're doing the stop motion uh, example of mitosis, then you can have 2 or 3 kids in there editing,
Exactly. And I could have
which
some
is
students
fantastic.
working on like the adjustment piece, whereas others are
Hmm.
working on the scenes. So
Yeah,
it now takes these projects that would normally take an individual days,
yeah.
a group of students a matter of an hour.
Yeah, and that's the way we want them working anyway. That's fantastic.
Exactly.
Okay, what's next?
Number 9, voiceover. This seems like something so simple, but it is the one thing I will tell you that my team in particular has advocated for teachers and for students. And Vicky, you touched on it before. We have a lot of students who don't want to be on camera, or who don't feel comfortable having themselves out there, an image of themselves. And so we talked about animation, but voiceover is, we talk about voice choice and agency as entry points for empowering students in the work they do in the classroom. And the truth is, student voice is the easiest way to just tap into that by saying, just let me hear you talk about the work that you're doing, or share. And oftentimes the best way teachers can understand the work their students are doing in the classroom is by hearing students talk about it.
Hmm.
So while we have stock, music and videos and all, and images that are in there, all powered by Adobe stock, we also have the ability to allow students to add voiceover to any piece of this. So
Ah.
to allow for narration to a story, or what's better than hearing students read that story that they wrote, that creative writing
Hmm.
piece. I mean, you'll never hear more excitement in a student voice than when they're reading their own characters saying those lines. Even something as simple as a reflection that gives us as the teacher more insight into their level of understanding and allows us to kind of help them along that learning journey. So that's another really great feature. And the last one,
Okay.
I know you're like, this has got to be the best one. Are you ready? This
I'm
is another
ready.
quick action. QR codes, baby. We do them.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason I bring up QR codes, which seems such a silly thing to bring up at the end, but how many of you have ever gone to make a QR code and you're definitely on some website that you're like, this is some weird website that definitely is going to give my computer a virus, and I don't know if this website's going to go away tomorrow. Well, guess what? Adobe Express is not going anywhere. You can keep all of your QR codes in one place, knowing that they're safe,
Oh,
and
nice.
being able to design the actual code itself. So you're not beholden to kind of like the site you use. You can design the color, the style, and then add those to any project quickly. And there's a million
Cool.
other things. I mean, again, we could have talked for an hour and a half. The websites, the Glide Show in particular, which is one of my favorites. There's so many things, but I know teachers out there are really struggling to find free tools to empower their students with creativity, given the constraints that are on districts now. And I also know that teachers often feel like they have to be like, if I don't know the tool, then I can't give my students a project with the tool. And the great part about Adobe Express is I always feel like I do PD on a tool that doesn't really require PD. So
Yeah.
the teachers can feel
It's really
secure
cool.
knowing they can design instruction around this and not feel like they are going to have to be the keeper of all the knowledge.
And I really am hoping you're willing to give us a free bonus 11 of something that's in beta right now that looks incredible. Are you able
Wow.
to talk
So
about it with
I
us
will.
or not?
I'm going to talk about this separately from Adobe Express. This is just a separate thing
Yeah,
that
so
you
this
should
is
feel
like
free
a
to check out.
separate, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
I knew Vicky would draw me into this, so she
I
knows
can't help
we.
it. I'm a podcaster. I have to talk about it. Yeah.
So
And
this is
AI.
not something I would say right now. This is not something I would use with my students right now. This is something for you to just check out on the. It's in public beta, but Adobe Podcast is one of my absolute favorite things. You can find it at podcast.adobe.com, but it is really designed to kind of empower every student with the ability to tell stories. So, if you think about the way you've edited audio in the past with those waveforms, it's even for
It's
veteran
tough.
podcasters like Vicky and myself, it is a chore, a labor of
Yeah.
love for sure. But podcast is really looking to reinvent the way we empower students through storytelling. So I would definitely say check it out. It's like I said, it's in public beta. You can check out
But
Adobe Express at
basically, it'll take
express.adobe.com.
the whole recording and do. So we're editing the show now here in Adobe Premiere Pro because what it does, and that's a paid, obviously,
I was just about to say
expensive
that. Yeah.
paid tool. But what it does is it takes all of our text and it even recognizes the two speakers, and then we're able to edit by editing the actual words on the screen, like we would edit a Word document or any kind of PDF or whatever that we would edit. And so what you're talking about is bringing that type of feature to, you record the voice, you see the words, you edit the words, and then you have an edited piece of audio.
Yeah. So I love actually showing people the tool.
Yeah.
It really has wowed everyone who's seen it. And again, it's still work in progress, but I think it just shows our commitment to making sure that students have every type of creative entry point possible. And you know what? I'm going to give one bonus 12 because you mentioned it just a second ago.
Okay.
I can't believe I forgot to mention this in my 10. You can do full PDF editing in Adobe Express. If you just drag a PDF into the browser window, it'll actually open the PDF and allow you to edit it. So for all those teachers who are like, I don't have a full version of Acrobat to do my editing, you can do it right in Adobe Express. So it really is our creative.
Great one.
Right? Can you believe I forgot that one?
Number one. We should list that because that's a big issue for teachers.
That's a good one to end on. But and there's so many things we didn't even get to, but I think the idea here is, and I'm glad to see it's not just Adobe, but it's other companies that are out here have recognized that, there's no more important commitment we can make than commitment to our students and our teachers and the education system. So, it's been really heartening for me to see how many educators have found their way into kind of big tech and have been able to add their voice to the conversation and provide that voice for teachers and students. So it's really nice to see some of the changes that have happened as a result of that. And I think companies have really listened and are really putting their best foot forward to make sure that teachers and students have what they need to, design the future that that they envision for themselves, especially our students.
And, I'm absolutely passionate about us providing a variety of many different tools to our students from many different companies. I want my students to have access to all of it because we don't know what they'll be needing or using for their future. And so, these are free tools that you can go and ask your school to activate and turn on for your school.
Mhm.
And it just has a lot more creative options for kids. So thanks for coming on the show,
Thank
Jesse,
you
and
so
for
much for
sharing
having me.
all
I
this
can't
free
believe it took
stuff.
so long for us to get together. This was
I know
like
it's
we've
just
known
how it
each other
goes.
forever. But
Yeah.
thank you so much. If anyone needs any more information, you can check out express.adobe.com, or Vicky mentioned our Education Exchange before. That's edx.adobe.com. You could find out information about all of our curricular resources and support for educators there.
Thanks for coming on the show, Jesse.
Thanks so much.